Hello, welcome back to my channel. Now, if you just came from watching the last video, which you probably didn't because I posted it like a minute ago, you would know I'm making this what if. Now, this is more of a redo than a what if, because if you haven't watched the last video, basically, I had already done this what if, but I just didn't record it, and it was actually really good. There was 8 parts to it. I got through everything. Basically, what if Midoriya had a grimoire? What if Midoriya had magic as a quirk? Now, some things before I start. How this will work, it'll work like a video game. Basically, his mana will have basically how I'm going to explain it is his mana will have points. Let's say he has 100 mana. If he does a spell, the spell requires 50 mana, and it's powerful. And if he does it twice, he can't do anything unless he recharges his mana, which takes actually sort of a long time. Or if he does multiple spells that are like 10 mana, he could do more, but they're not as powerful. And they do differ, they're not all attack and defense. And, he has lots of magics. And there was something that I couldn't find out. So if you want to, comment below what I should do at this part. I couldn't find out who I wanted him to intern with. I wanted him to intern with like another magic-based hero. But the closest thing to a magic-based hero was one of Endeavor's sidekicks called Majestic. No spoilers here, but his quirk was kind of lame. But anyway, sorry, no spoilers. That wasn't a spoiler. It's still. I just really couldn't find anybody to internship with. In fact, I don't even remember who I had him intern with. But that's what makes it a redo. This isn't scripted, but next part will be scripted. I'll be working on it. Maybe I'll post it soon. I want to try to post it soon. I want to be posting a little more. Anyway, let's go. Young Zuko Midoriya is 4 years old. He gets back from school one day. As he gets on his computer and starts watching an All Might video. While watching, he'd say, "All Might's so cool. I can't wait till I get my quirk." As Inka would go away, looking weird. Looking sad. I don't know why she looks sad. It's like tell me, do you people know why she looks sad? Because it's like she already knew Midori wasn't going to get a quirk somehow. Now that I think about it, I feel like it's because she knew Midori wanted to be a hero, and hero is dangerous. Especially when she said that video makes her scared. Maybe that's why. Anyway, they would go to the quirk doctor, as the doctor would say, sorry, doctor would say, "You're sort of a rare one. You sort of have 2 quirks." As Midori would smile happily, as Inko would say, "2 quirks? And what do you mean by sort of?" As the doctor would say, "Technically, it's more of 1 quirk, but with 2 aspects. You could call it mana and grimoire." As basically, you can't use his quirk. Midori can't use his quirk grimoire without mana. As the doctor would explain, mana is basically some form of energy that Izuku's body creates. And then grimoire is him turning that energy into different type of attacks. As Inko would say, oh, really? Oh, okay." As Midori would say, "How do I use them?" As the doctor would explain, Midori can generate mana naturally, and maybe he could even enhance himself with it. As the doctor would say, for grimoire, I don't know. That's supposed to show up later on. I'm not that sure. They leave the hospital, Uh, sorry, they leave the hospital. Now, Midori would go to school. As he tell the kids his quirk. Now, the kids would be like, that's cool, Midoriya. But Bako would say, really? Are you sure you have a quirk? Then show it to us. Midori would say, I don't know how. As Kachan would say, Midori's just pretending. He's probably quirkless. People would say, really? Midori would say, no, I have a quirk. The kids would say, then show us. As Midoriya would be quiet, not knowing how to show them. During that moment, people would just rule Midoriya as quirkless and a liar. Midoriya would go years without manifesting his grimoire, as he'd be wondering how to do it. He trained, which would get his body up to the point of past the 10 months of training. It wasn't until one day when Midoriya was walking home after being bullied by Bakugo that a sludge villain would attack him. A sludge villain would attack him. As the sludge villain would attack him, as he'd say, don't struggle now, kid. Just give me your body. Midoriya would be saying, maybe this is for the better. I wasn't worth anything. When all of a sudden, a grimoire would start to appear in front of Midoriya. Midoriya would see the grimoire. He'd say, a book? What is that? As the surgeon would say, what is this, kid? Your quirk? Midoriya would think, my quirk? My quirk? The book would open, showing something. As he'd say, towering tornado. Midoriya would think in his mind, towering tornado. As a giant gust of wind would emerge from Midoriya's body, blowing the sludge villain all apart from the under part of the bridge. The sludge villain would be blown apart as Midoriya would be gasping for air. He'd hear a voice. I am here. He'd look up to see it was his hero, All Might. He'd say, All Might, as he'd fall over due to lack of oxygen. All Might would go to check on the kid, but see the sludge villain escaping. He would go run after the sludge villain, but moving the boy to a safer spot. Midoriya would wake up, in a different spot. He'd wake up wondering if it was a dream, if he really did meet All Might. Midoriya would look around as he was holding a grimoire in his hand. Midoriya would say, is this my grimoire? My quirk finally awakened. He'd run home as he'd tell his mom and show his mom. They'd go outside as Midoriya would do a towering tornado. It was sort of like airstrike shield. Now, if you're wondering what I mean, basically how airstrike shield from Shield Hero works is, if you're wondering how Naofumi controls it, basically when Naofumi's about to cast it, he can basically see it in his eyes. No one else can see it, but he can see where he wants it to be or where he wants it to go. So that's technically how it is. So he did it in a safe environment as he did it again. After Inko would think that was amazing, but after doing that, Midoriya would fall over as a lack of mana or overuse of using a lot of mana. Midoriya would say, is that a side effect to my quirk? As Midoriya would be like, what happened? Inko would ask what happened, as Midoriya would say, I ran out of mana. Inko would be like, mana? As Midoriya would be like, how do I know that? Now, I suspect that just like Naruto, the characters of Black Clover know when they're about to run out of mana. I don't know if it's like some sort of mental, storage thing where they can go in their mind and see how much mana they got. But apparently they have it. But Midoriya would spend the next 10 months of training upping his mana. Midoriya's mana would be at 120. And so far, Midoriya would have actually unlocked another spell. So he had Towering Tornado. Now, Midoriya would have the spell would be called Sea Dragon's Roar. Now, just as I said, he has 120 mana. Each spell would take up a certain amount of mana. Now, Towering Tornado would take up 20 mana, and Sea Dragon's Roar would take up 30 mana. Midoriya would be set as he can summon his Grimoire and desummon it at will, so he doesn't need like a pouch for it. Now, Midoriya would be walking into the UA entrance exam as Baka would see him. Baka would shoulder nudge Midoriya. Site, get out my way, you damn nerd. I don't even know why you're here. Midoriya had totally forgot. Midoriya didn't really show off his quirk at school. He was too busy training it. Anyway, they'd go inside as Midoriya would start muttering. Due to Bakugo, Midoriya never said Bakugo in this version, so Bakugo would still be very mean to Midoriya, as Bakugo would say, "Shut up, stupid nerd." Midoriya would notice that he was sort of inconveniencing everybody as he'd stop talking, resolving in either not mentioning Midoriya due to Midoriya stop talking. Oh yeah. Anyway, the students would go outside. Midoriya would start murmuring as Ida would ask Midoriya if he could stop murmuring, that he was sort of like messing with the other students. Midoriya would see as the other students were looking at him, saying that he couldn't pass. Midoriya would look around to see a random girl having a hard time as she was doing breathing exercises. Being a good person, Midoriya wanted to see if she was going to be okay, as Ida would stop him again, cock blocking. Anyway, the match would start as President Mike would say, "Go!" Everybody would be standing still. Wait, no, the gates would open. President Mike would say, "What are you guys doing? There are no countdowns in a real battle. Go, go, go!" As Ida would and everybody else would rush out. Midoriya would rush out too. Midoriya would decide that since he didn't have that much mana yet, and it'd be better to save his attacks that well, he would decide it'd be better to attack the robots in big groups. So he had to do it earlier. Sorry, let's go do something somewhere. Yeah, it'd be better to firmly attack in big groups, which is why he had to do this earlier, where most of the robots were in groups. Lord would be running as he'd see some contestants in front of him, as there'd be lots of robots. Midoriya would find us a good way. He would reach his hand out as he'd say, actually, should he say magic in front of his attacks? Or should he just say the name of this? I'm gonna say, he just says the name of the spells. He would say Sea Dragon's Roar as he would shoot off a powerful water attack. A water dragon would come. As some of the contestants would see the water dragon moving out the way. Midoriya would be able to destroy three robots. I'm gonna say there were 2 3-pointers and 1 2-pointer. Getting about 8 points immediately. Midoriya would say, "Good, nice job, I got myself a few points." Other than that, Midoriya would decide to conserve his mana. Seeing robots, he would chase them into Midoriya would see robots. Seeing robots, he would basically run away from them, and until Midoriya would try to hide from them. While hiding from them, Midoriya would sneak behind them, switching the off switch, as this was a way. There were 3 ways to pass combat points. There were 4 ways to. There were 3 ways to get points. There were 4 ways to get points: rescuing other combatants, destroying the robots, immobilizing the robots, and switching off the off switch. Fun fact: that's how Mineta and Invisible Girl got in. Invisible Girl switched off the robots, and Mineta immobilized them, which is how they both got in. If you didn't know that. Midoriya would immobilize, only using his quirk when there were 3 or 4 robots around, as he did use his quirk a little more, draining him down to 50 mana. He always tried to keep 50 mana in case of emergencies. Well, I'm gonna say Midoriya, due to all the running around and switching and using the magic, Midoriya would have a good 36 points. Midoriya would wonder if that was good. Wait, no, 41 points. Midoriya would wonder if that was good enough to pass, as there'd be a 0-pointer robot. Midoriya would decide just to relax, and maybe as this was the perfect chance. Since all the combatants were running away, all the robots that they were fighting were left behind. They were already damaged, so Midoriya could use one of his weak spells. Could use Towering Tornado, which was a weak spell that didn't require that, which required lots of mana, but compared to the other one, not that much, as he could destroy them easily. As he would hear a scream, as he'd see Uraka, the girl he wanted to talk to earlier. Midoriya, without knowing, would move his body and run over to Uraka. He knew the 0 point was too big, so Midoriya knew none of his spells could hurt it, but Midoriya had to try. Yes, running to the girl. He'd see the girl. He lift up. He would lift up the rubble. While lifting up the rubble, Midoriya was lifting up the rubble a little bit, but it would have been easier if he had some help. Midoriya would keep trying to lift up the rubble, as all of a sudden Midoriya would start glowing a little. He'd lift up the rubble easier. As he'd pick up the girl, running, the girl was hurt, so he couldn't do anything about it. As he said earlier, none of his spells were that powerful to take down a foe that big. The 0-pointer would be running as Midoriya's grimoire would open, as it'd say, spatial magic. No, would it even be called spatial magic? I'm gonna just call it spatial. As Midori would say spatial. Using it, he would rush to a different place, mainly the place of where all of the other people had been. Now, and I will make a limit to spatial. He can't use spatial. Spatial takes. I'm gonna say spatial takes 35. Since Ask 13 says warp quirks are pretty rare, and I am gonna make it different so he can't go anywhere he wants. It's more like he can warp anywhere he can warp anywhere in about a 1 kilometer meter. Like, wait, is kilometer that big? Check. Okay, think about it like this. He can he can warp anywhere within an area. Okay, within an area. He had to in any area. So he can't warp too far. He can warp far away from where he is. He can't like warp from town to town. He can only warp from far distances. Like, let's say like he's walking, right, and he left something at school. Depending on how far the school is from where he is, he could warp. So that's what I'm saying. Warping there, as they'd be like, did he just warp? But how? I thought he had a water quirk. As they'd be like, no, he has some sort of wind quirk. As Recovery Girl would come, as she'd say, let me see the patient. She'd see Uraka. Uraka just had a sprained ankle. She would kiss Uraka as Midoriya would start to stumble, falling down, as she would kiss Midoriya too. Midoriya would say thank you, but I'm not that hurt. I just exhausted some of my mana. As as Midoriya would get up and he'd ask if Uraka was okay. As Uraka would say she was okay, and she would thank him. As President Mike would say, okay, that's the end of the test. All parts, all all examinees, please go change and go home. Midoriya would change, going home. 1 week later, he'd feel uneasy about the situation. Did he pass or not? But he'd get a letter from UA. He'd go in, he'd open the letter, now wanting to get the hesitation over with. Sorry, my eye hurts a little. but he'd open the letter wanting to get the hesitation over with. As it'd say, "Hello, hello, is this thing on?" It'd be All Might. Midoriya would be shaking as he'd be like, "All Might!" Anyway, All Might, to sum this up, All Might would explain he got number one getting, yeah, he got number one getting first place due to him having re- having rescue points and combat points. Cause I remember like Bakugo was only 10 points. Oh, Bakugo really only had 10 points more than Midoriya. Anyway, I think that was the case. Anyway, Midoriya would have gotten first place as he'd be in Hero Academia. Now, in this version, Midoriya wouldn't cry due to him. I mean, he wouldn't cry. He would cry a little out of happiness. He'd go out and tell his mom, as his mom would be excited for him. As that's where this part will be ending. If you like this part, comment down. I liked it. Now, I lost the paper, but I had wrote down the correct thing. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure I have the recordings in my phone because I used to record myself. So I'll just see what I wrote down. Anyway, before you click off, I would like to hear something in the comment. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions, and it'll determine how this would go. Uraka never saved Midoriya. So, I don't know if she would have gotten in or not. Okay? So, I want to know, should I keep Uraka or should I replace them with somebody? Either somebody from the show or somebody from Black Clover. Because if Uraka doesn't get in, I kind of want to replace Uraka with, like, Mimosa or Noelle. Because Noelle could have a nice water quirk. And then Mimosa could have a nice plant-based quirk. I'm also thinking of adding Yuno, or it could be anybody from class from this. I could add Cammy. I don't care. Or basically, I can also add Nejire or Mirio or Tamaki. Basically, I just changed their age. So that's all, I guess. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.